What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Grizzly Bear Blues Live. I'm your host, Parker Fleming, recording this on Monday night, the night before the Memphis Grizzlies have a back-to-back home game between the Orlando Magic and then also the Los Angeles Clippers. Having to record on Monday night since I go live on Wednesdays and they play tomorrow night. But you know what? I also had to accommodate for a very big-time guest I have on the show. But first, before I introduce him, let me tell you, I can keep in touch with the show and with the blog. So GBB Live is the flagship podcast for Bluff City Media's Memphis Grizzly Bear Blues podcast network. Still on the same feed, even though you probably noticed everything all switched, the name and the logo and all that. So that's all cool. But yeah, make sure you subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, however you get your podcasts. You can find the Grizzly Bear Blues podcast network and GBB Live right there. And Grizzly Bear Blues is now on bluffcitymedia.co, and you can find all of our Grizzly content there. All of our game content is free, and for insider content from me and my special guest, become a Bluff City Media Insider for just $5 a month for the best premium Memphis Grizzlies, Memphis Tigers, and all things Memphis sports. Once again, I'm your host, Parker Fleming, and with me is none other than the Stats Sensei himself, Stats SAC, I'm out of nicknames. Let me just go ahead and introduce him. Shawn Coleman, what's up, man? How's it going?
Man, doing all right. It's nice to talk some Grizzlies basketball and us getting back to our winning ways. We've definitely taken advantage of a nice part of the schedule, but hey, I don't think that in any way should water down some of the success that we're seeing. But plenty of good things to talk about. And Parker, the best part about it is anytime I get to talk sports with you, it makes the night better. So good seeing you, sir.
I appreciate that big time. Always great talking hoops with you, Shawn. And, I want to address the soft part of the schedule stuff here because, coming into March, okay, I can't say much about soft schedule. They played the Houston Rockets twice, but this was supposed to be a rather difficult to modest part of the schedule. You had the Warriors twice, Dallas 3 times. You have Atlanta on the road. Everyone thought Atlanta was going to be pretty good, but they are the definition of, as MJF would say, mid. You had the Los Angeles Lakers, Los Angeles Clippers, and Denver Nuggets on the road, who they did lose to on the road. But, yes, the Mavericks didn't have Luka for any of those games. The Mavericks also didn't have Kyrie for 2 of those games. Golden State had everyone except for Wiggins, but the Memphis Grizzlies did not have Ja Morant, Steven Adams, Brandon Clark. 3 rotation players, 2 starters, one of them being their best player, one of them probably being one of the most low-key important players on the team. So, yeah, cool. They had opponents. There's a little injury luck with opponents, but also the Grizzlies weren't exactly the luckiest either when it comes to absences. But you know what? 6 straight wins as of this recording, and 9 of the last 10 as of this recording. That's some good stuff, Shawn Coleman.
Absolutely. And this is where you start to get into where you need to put, the relevance of what has led to the Grizzlies having, their best stretcher. I put a stat out there earlier on Twitter that over the past 10 games, the Grizzlies have made 150 threes, the most threes that they've ever made over a 10-game stretch. That's also coincided with them having the highest true shooting percentage that they've ever had. In the month of March, Parker, we're top 5, or we're pushing top 5 in terms of half-court offense, effective field goal percentage, and true shooting percentage. The 2 general concerns of this offense were shot selection and half-court offense. We absolutely are excelling in those areas. And I think that the biggest thing of all to notice is the 3 players that you mentioned, Ja Morant, Brandon Clark, and Steven Adams. What's the part of their games that they all have in common that they don't really feature that often, at least to a high level? It's shooting from distance. No offense to Ja Morant. He's hot, he's cold at times when it comes to that. So I think that when we talk about sustainability and significance of what we've seen so far from the Grizzlies, it's the fact that they have adjusted to featuring the strengths of the roster that they had at their disposal, which was shooting the 3. Tyus, Jaren, Dez, Luke Kennard, others. We've seen Roddy and Santi do real well. But without those guys, the Grizzlies have done two things very well offensively. They've featured the hell out of Jaren Jackson Jr., and they've become much more resourceful at having success from three. Now, the Grizzlies are not going to average 15 threes a game moving forward. They're likely not going to shoot 39%. They're likely not going to have a true shooting percentage above 60%. But the big key is that they've built the confidence in knowing they can at least perform at that level for certain stretches of games, even against quality competition. That's the big thing that stands out. Again, one of my favorite stats that I like to throw out there, the Grizzlies are now 64-11 when they simply shoot 35% or better from three. When you're featuring Tyus, Jaren, Dez, Kennard, and others, you should be able to get there pretty consistently. And that's what comes away from this. If the Grizzlies can be able to feature the three in a more reliable fashion in crucial times of the game consistently, that's what should come from this stretch. That's the big thing that we're hoping is sustainable. And that's what's going to be a big key for us surviving and thriving in the playoffs.
Absolutely. And, one of the things that the absence in particular of John Morant, Steven Adams, Brandon Clark, what play type do those three have in common? Or maybe just they have together? It's the pick and roll.
Absolutely.
And that's something the Grizzlies feature a lot. And without two of your most prominent rollers, and then probably arguably one of the most heavily used players in the pick and roll, Taylor Jenkins and his team have had to adapt. And in that, you're mentioning the success of leaning on guys like Tyus Jones, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Luke Kennard. Taylor Jenkins is coming up with more diverse sets to generate those looks. Sometimes it's just feeding the hand and just getting the ball to Jaren Jackson Jr. in the post. Jaren's been used as a screener, which also the thing with Jaren that's nice is he can be used as both a popper and a roller. And usually when he pops, he has a mismatch and he gets driving to his left. And you know how that's been going here lately. And then they've been running a lot more shooting actions for Desmond Bane and Luke Kennard. I've been loving the stuff they've been doing running Luke Kennard off screens. And when you mix and pair all that with how Tyus Jones can operate in the pick and roll as a facilitator or as a guard getting to his floater, I mean, I don't think it's any coincidence, Shawn, that you're throwing out all these numbers about their effective field goal percentage, their true shooting percentage, and their half-court offense. And the fact, too, that they're spicing up their offense a little bit more. They're deviating away from going heavy pick and roll, and they are trying to go to the strengths of guys like Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane and Tyus Jones, Luke Kennard to adapt to life without guys like Steven Adams, John Morant, who's back now, or Brandon Clark. So that's kind of how I see it.
Well, and then the high usage of John Morant being eliminated from the equation. What do you do with that? You don't have a guy who's going to be able to be as effective as John Morant at that high of a usage. That just speaks to how special John Morant is when he's on the court. So how do you overcome that? Well, it's you move the ball more. 13 to 15 more passes per game in the month of March compared to previously. What has that led to? It's led to 2 more assists per game, nearly 7 more points off assists. They're averaging 70 points off of assists per game in March, where it was 63 in February. And the biggest key of all, where they're getting the biggest boost of all, Parker, when it comes to their three-point shooting, they are shooting 5% better in March than they were in February, 2.5 more catch and shoot threes in the month of March versus February. What does all that lead to? It leads to that consistency that we're talking about. And also, without John Morant being the guy to go into the paint and be able to produce, they're able to sit there and counter to allow for them to be able to do it. So that's the other big thing that comes from this. Now that we've gotten this consistency, this confidence in finding these counters and passing the basketball, if teams are going to collapse more often to stop John Morant in the paint, we're much more suited to be able to hit those counters and find the open three to make teams pay from distance.
Absolutely. And I really want to, use this show, and also too, I know, you've been talking with me about ideas that you're cooking up on this particular player. A player that's been a real big catalyst in all this is Desmond Bane, because he's been really potent at a ton of different levels here for the Memphis Grizzlies, especially in the month of March. I mean, I'm looking at his basketball reference page right now, and he's averaging 21.4 points, 5.1 rebounds, and 4.6 assists on 50.9% shooting from the field, 39.8% from three, 85.4% from the free throw line. But anyways, he's putting together arguably one of the best months of his career. And it's going to sound pretty outlandish. I mean, if you looked at last month, or last March, he went berserk. He shot 52% from three for the entire month of March on 50% shooting. But that's kind of what I want to get into here, because, he's averaging like the third most points per game in a month. Like, you can count that October, November stretch. I kind of combined those into like 1 month. He didn't get to play the whole month of November, and then October is already really short. But he's also averaging the second most assists that he has ever had. But the thing that really stands out to me, that's really just encapsulating everything with Dez's game thus far in this month, is the fact that he's maintaining efficiency even though his three-point shot is not exactly on. Yes, 39.8% from three is a really good mark for a lot of players, but for Desmond Bane, he's shooting almost 43% through his first 3 seasons of his NBA career, but still maintaining his efficiency. It's really capturing the downhill Dez, that the moniker that he's been dubbed lately. It's just capturing his growth as a driver, as a finisher in the paint, and even a little bit as a play. And it's also capturing that as a playmaker too, doing a lot of what John Morant does, driving, absorbing the attention from the defense, and kicking it out at the last possible split second once the defense is totally shifted, all focused on Desmond Bane, kicking it out to guys like Dylan Brooks, Luke Kennard, Tyus Jones, kicking out to those guys for threes, generating open looks, generating quality looks. And it's just one of those things. He's just clicking at the right time. It's March. Playoffs are starting here in less than a month. And, it's been an up and down year for Desmond Bane, looking like an all-NBA shooting guard to start the season. And he has that toe injury, and he's trying to work his way back into it. But, now it really feels like Desmond Bane is playing some of his best basketball, but also with room to even progress to the mean.
Absolutely. And we'll start with a few things there. First off, you talk about this being the second highest, assist, production that he's had in the month in his career. Well, we had that stretch at the early part of Ja being out when he was out due to the suspension. We saw Dez get those 7 rebounds, 7 assists for like 4 or 5 straight games. He's consistently picked up that part of his game. But the key figure that I want to hit on here, Parker, is that you said that in March of this year, in March of last year, Dez was averaging about the same number of points, right? But last year, it was because he was shooting 52% from three. This year, it's because of the fact that he's getting to the rim. And the numbers overall back that up. During his rookie year, only 46% of his shots were from two, 54% were from three. 2 years later, 56% of his shots are 2-point shots. 44% are threes. What is that? Why is Desmond Bane, one of the best three-point shooters in the league, shooting more often from two? Well, it's because teams now know where he does well at the three-point line. It's him countering more confidently. That's allowing for him to be good. The other thing that stands out is that 70% of his 2-point shots and 90% of his 3-point shots in his rookie year were assisted. This year, 50% of his 2-point shots are assisted. 70% of his 3-point shots are assisted. The reason I bring that up is because that shows that he has made significant strides in creating his own shot. So the resourcefulness of Desmond Bane is starting to show. And the real big key, the exciting thing about it is this. Put a stat out there the other day. Desmond Bane now has scored 25 plus points 30 times in his career. The only other Grizzlies to do that before their 200th career game or within their first 200 career games are Ja Morant, Shareef Abdul-Rahim, and Pau Gasol. I think that those are 3 of your top 5 scorers in Grizzlies franchise history. The other is Zach Randolph. But what's the thing that you look at with Abdul-Rahim, then Pau, then Zach Randolph? They were all in different eras of the Grizzlies. Now, if
Right.
you view John Morant and Desmond Bane as being two of those five best scorers in franchise history, this is the first time we've had two of them playing together. And that's what stands out. So the point that I'm getting at is that with this resourcefulness that we're seeing from Desmond Bane, if the three is not there, he still can maintain the same amount of scoring. And we're really starting to see, as special as John Morant is, the best scoring talent in franchise history, he's complemented by one of the best in franchise history on his own right in Desmond Bane.
Yeah. I will ask you this too. Like, how much do you weigh with something like that? I'm not trying to take away anything from Desmond Bane's score, especially since we're dropping a whole podcast on how well he's been playing. How much do you weigh talent versus era, like in the fact that like Desmond Bane, he's become such a prolific scorer because he's one of the best shooters, like one of the best 5 shooters in the NBA. How
Well,
how much do you weigh the scoring talent versus his 3-point accuracy?
Well, the fact is that he's evolved, right? Because
Right.
you look at shooters who have done really well. You know, the shooter that Desmond Bane compares most frequently to start his career is Duncan Robinson. We saw a few years ago how special Duncan Robinson was from three, and he was actually more productive from three. He's actually possibly the only other player who's been more productive to start his career than Desmond Bane was. But where's Duncan Robinson now after his 5-year, $90 million contract, Parker?
Don't bring this up, man. This is like kind of disheartening for somebody who's wanting to bring Duncan Robinson to Memphis. This is very, but also too, I'm totally healed. They got Desmond Bane and they got Luke Kennard. But I'll let you answer the rhetorical question that you asked me.
We'll bring up Luke Kennard as well. Luke Kennard is excelling off the bench. But what has Des done in his first few years in the league that for a lot of shooters you don't see? He's
evolved.
He's evolved the counters in his game. As the league is adjusted to him and made it harder for him to be able to consistently get the threes that he's looking at, which we're seeing it's tougher for him to hit that 3-point shot, he's still being able to get his points because of what he can do off the dribble, because of the footwork that he has, because of the confidence that he has to get to the rim, the 3-level scoring ability. And even if that doesn't work out, he's finding different ways through the uptick in assists as well. So when we're talking about it being his shooting along with his talent, the shooting certainly is there. But what separates Dez from these other elite shooters that we see early in their careers who kind of fizzle out a bit? It's the unique ability for him to be able to adapt his game and counter to be a much more resourceful scorer than just a shooting specialist.
Absolutely. I will ask you this too, because it's something that like I'm trying to I guess balance both because you can't have it both ways a lot of the times. Like I'm loving this downhill Dez, the fact that he's being a lot more aggressive going to the basket. He's being a lot more methodical, weaving his way inside the half court offense. How he can sometimes just look like Derrick Henry when he's on the drive, Shawn. I know you as a Titans fan, you love to see that. You know, when he's just going in full freight train in transition, and then he just shifts the gears, hits that Euro, finishes almost like that, that little scoop there, and then the right hand fillet. Like I love when Desmond Bane does that, but also it's one of those things too where I'm just like, I dead gum. This dude's a top 5 shooter. I want him shooting 9, 10 threes a game, man. Like that's what I would love to see. Because, I was looking at it last year and he kind of showed the potential of what he can do with more 3-point shooting opportunities in that Minnesota series. Because I want to say he shot 9 3. I want to say he shot 9 threes a game against Minnesota. And in those 9 games, and also too, I wish I can find this to research it, but it's somewhere off in the Grizzly Bear Blues domain that I can't find. So I can't go back to this. But Desmond Bane has shown the ability to maintain accuracy while increasing his volume. And, last year, I want to say he was outside the top 25 in 3-point attempts per game while being in the top. Wasn't he second in 3-point percentage last year behind Kennard? I was just like, man, imagine if this guy can be top 5 in both attempts per game and and percentage. But at the same time, though, his evolution as a driver, as a passer, like I dove into last week on Bluff City Media for our insiders, he's becoming a dime dropper. He's becoming a guy that can get to the rim. You kind of gotta have it both ways. Shawn, where do you kind of stand on this? The whole like, oh, Desmond Bane needs to shoot more threes, but also like tapping into his growth as a 2-point scorer. Where do you stand here?
Well, again, it goes back to, I don't want to overuse the word evolution, but with evolution comes the ability to be able to contribute in multiple ways. Right now, Desmond Bane knows that the 3-point shooting is being taken care of by Luke Kennard. He also knows that with John Morant out, somebody's got to be able to get the balance going by getting to the rim and driving through the lane. That's the role that he's taken on. We know that Jaren Jackson Jr. can do the same thing about being featured inside and being featured outside. So that's where I stand with it. You know, we talk about it, the Grizzlies, when it comes to their core three on offense right now, Morant, Dez, and Jaren Jackson Jr. The biggest overall exciting thing about them now is there's multiple versions of each player when you need them on offense. Jaren can dominate inside and be a unique big shooting outside. Des Bane can be one of the best shooters in the league, but also a secondary dribble drive option. John Morant can be one of the best scorers in the league, but also one of the best playmakers. That's where it stands out. So I'm fine with Des, and as his time goes on, by trusting how good of a shot selector he is, you trust his intelligence to know when to feature with that part of his game. He's going to get better at that. So overall, I think that it's a definite, great aspect of Desmond Bane's game that now more than ever, he can be a different version of himself when a certain version is needed the most, and he can excel, which we've seen him do with and without John Morant over the past few weeks.
Absolutely. And I guess one thing I'm excited with all this, I like the point you brought up about there are different versions of each of the big three when it's needed. You have John Morant, the ISO pick and roll guy, the point guard that gets out in transition. Also the point guard that can really set up his teammates. Like just as easily as he can have like 30 to 35 points, he can easily go get 12 to 15 assists as well. I mean, Desmond Bane attacking as a scorer, but also just being the floor spacer whenever the defenses do collapse on John Morant. There's Desmond Bane ready to fire. They can run him off actions. And Jaren Jackson Jr., guy in the post, attack mismatches from the perimeter, shoot the 3-ball. But I think the real thing with Dez, and I'm excited about his growth, is just how he attacks these counters in the playoffs. Because you see where teams try to run. A big part of him also not taking as many threes as teams are just running him off the line. He's not a surprise anymore. He's a bona fide elite scoring shooting guard. We'll say it. He's a top shooter. He's evolved as a playmaker. He's evolved as an interior scorer. He's reaching towards being an elite scorer. And, what's going to happen when teams run him off the line? How is he going to counter that in a playoff situation? Where are we going to see his playmaking and also to his driving, his mid-range shooting? One thing I immediately just thought of, kind of just squirreling in my own take here. What's wild, Shawn? Do you know what's absolutely wild about what Desmond Bane is doing as a 2-point scorer this month? What?
What is that?
It's without Steven Adams.
Mm-hmm.
Just imagine what happens. This isn't, I hope Finaki's stats doesn't come at me for this. This isn't Steven Adams slander. It's just that what happens when Steven Adams gets back because of their synergy off handoffs, off cuts, and how much of a good screener Steven Adams is. All that space created, what is that going to do for Desmond Bane as an offensive player? He's putting together his best month of his career as a 2-point scorer, as a driver, as a playmaker. And it goes back to what I said earlier. There's still room for growth, still room for that to all be amplified. And I'm very excited and intrigued to see how he now attacks playoff defenses with this level of scoring prowess in his bag. Because last year, he was a good scorer, and in that Warriors series, he was hurt. So, his effectiveness kind of went down the drain after the Minnesota series. And also, too, It's the difference of like Golden State was like, see, Minnesota was like, we're not letting John Morant beat us. Golden State was like, we're not going to let Desmond Bane or Brandon Clark beat us. So I'm excited to see all this. I'm excited to see what kind of chess moves Desmond Bane throws out there in the playoffs, man.
And we add this to the thing is, and I really hope Funaki Stats, by the way, who is a phenomenal guy, just
phenomenal Twitter account.
Gosh, yes, great guy, and just excellent work on his end. I'll tell you what I'm even more excited about: us being okay if we don't have Steven Adams. And the reason that I say that is because we don't know what his health is going to be like when he comes back. You know, he's been out a month longer than many had anticipated. And even if he does come back healthy, we've already seen a series. Now, Steven Adams is better this year, I think, overall than he was last year, especially defensively. But we've already seen a series in Minnesota where he wasn't on the court. So I know what you're saying when Steven Adams comes back, but this month, and then that Minnesota series, we've got proof that Desmond Bane doesn't necessarily need Steven Adams to be able to cook, to be able to succeed. But that also is the encouraging sign. We're talking about what Desmond Bane can do in his 2-point game, especially when it's needed more to balance out the offense without Steven Adams and John Morant. We already know what he can do as a shooter in big moments. Arguably the best start to a career for an actual shooter on the road in NBA history. And last year just absolutely thrived on the road against Minnesota and at times against Golden State. So now you add the 2-point confidence, you add the three-level scoring with Desmond Bane. It's great to see. So I get your point. When it comes to the superstar and support that is Steven Adams, I would love to see what Desmond Bane and John Morant and others can do with him. But even if we don't get him back, what we've seen this month, again, the biggest overall thing to me that has come from this month are two things. Number one, with what everybody was saying about how important Steven Adams is to us, we've proven to ourselves we can win without him. And the other thing is, of course, being able to close out games. But if we can get Steven Adams back, that's great. Hopefully we do. But if we don't, we've got plenty of proof that we can still thrive by being able to balance out the 3-point shot and getting inside when it comes to having success.
Shawn, I don't know what makes me more happy. Your points there, or the fact that you said cook. The fact that he's still cooking, even without Steven Adams. Man. But yeah, no. And there's two more things I really want to ask you here on this show before we close. But one of those is, how this all helps Ja, because I wrote about it with their late game offensive woes, the fact that there is a bit of an over-reliance on John Morant. That's not a slight at Ja, because he's produced some very special moments in those clutch time moments, and he had really evolved, and he's really evolved into one of the most potent late game weapons in the game. But teams, they figure it out. You got to, like I said, you got to spice it up a little bit. I think one of those things is Desmond Bane, and I think it's one of those things where it's not necessarily less John Morant, but you're putting John Morant in different spots to succeed. You can have Desmond Bane running offense, and you can have John Morant attack from the wing, attack as a cutter, or as let's say they're running a pick and roll sequence with Desmond Bane and John Morant is on the weak side corner. When that pass gets fired to the opposite side, the defense shifts. That's the driving lane for Ja, and it's a wide open pathway for him to just kind of just smoothly get into the paint, smoothly get a bucket. I just think there's a lot of potential there to really fully capture, because one could argue that Desmond Bane's assist numbers are inflated because a lot of the month was out John Morant. And somebody had to take on the playmaking responsibility. But I think right now, there's a chance to even tap into it a little bit more. I'm not saying like he's going to average 6 assists a game or anything. But, this is a great way to really maximize the fit with John Morant and Desmond Bane. And it's because of Desmond Bane's growth as a driver and as a playmaker. What are your thoughts, Shawn?
And it's also going to make John Morant even harder to defend, right? I agree. You
Yep.
can use him more off ball more. You can use him as, that baseline cutter to allow for him to be able to find good matchups. We've even seen the Grizzlies post up Ja a little bit over his first few games back. That's been a rare but, intriguing aspect of things. But where I really think it helps out John Morant, Parker, is it helps him be able to, in a quicker sense, identify what he needs to be, the elite scorer or the elite playmaker. Because if teams are going to start respecting our three-point shooting more, that means they're going to leave one player on John Morant more often. And I understand that there are some elite guys out there, but you're not often going to stay in front of John Morant. So it's going to make it easier on him to score. If they still clog the paint, it's going to make it easier for Ja because now he has more confidence than ever of getting the ball out to our shooters. And we've seen many times, I know that Luka Doncic, I believe earlier tonight, had just an unbelievable pass from the corner to the other corner from three. We've seen John Morant make, not necessarily passes to that level, but we have seen John Morant make very, very difficult passes time and time again to set up a three-point shot. So I think that the emergence of Desmond Bane even more is going to make it easier for John Morant to quickly identify what role do I take, the elite scorer or elite playmaker, and that's going to make him even harder to defend. And the biggest thing of all, if John Morant can get into a quicker mode of knowing which role he wants to take on, that increases the likelihood we're going to find the best shot possible more frequently, which is going to be needed in the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's going to be one of those things too where like that could also be determined mid-game, how quickly he adjusts to that mid-game. Because let's say he's cooking as a scorer and teams are going to throw traps at him or stuff like that. You can put Desmond Bane on the ball and we've seen what he can do. We've seen what he can cook. And, the attention towards Ja could open up looks for Desmond Bane to attack defenses as a guy that's attacking closeouts or as a three-point shooter or, again, attacking closeouts as a playmaker. So there's a whole lot. I've been thrown out this word a lot because, I want to see the Grizzlies continue to diversify their offense because they have the weapons to do so now, Shawn. Not just because of acquisitions of guys like Luke Kennard or what people like Santi Aldama can do, but it's the growth of their big three, as we've said earlier, the growth of Jaren Jackson Jr. and his efficiency, how John Morant just continues to balance his elite scoring with his elite playmaking, and how Desmond Bane continues to pair his elite three-point shooting with growth as a driver and as a playmaker. Keep tapping into that. And I think it's gonna be something that really helps elevate the Grizzlies offense, whether it's in the half court or overall or in the postseason. Continue to tap into that. And I think one of the two guys that it starts with, I say one of the two because the other guy is Jaren Jackson Jr. tapping into him as a main feature option. I mean, man, that past 2 weeks of basketball was just beautiful. It was just so much fun to watch him dominate. He treated guys like Christian Wood, Dwight Powell, Jabari Smith Jr., Draymond Green. He treated them, or Kevon Looney. He treated them like they were JV basketball players, and he was a 5-star. All right. How familiar are you with like mixtapes, like hoop mixtapes from high school players?
Mixtapes?
YouTube videos. YouTube videos of like high school prospects.
YouTube?
he looks like Andrew Wiggins in his mixtape days, like just like being able to overpower anybody to the rim and nobody's gonna have anything to do to stop him. I'm not saying like specifically Andrew Wiggins. I'm just saying I'm not using Andrew Wiggins as a comparison for play style. I'm using it as a comparison for dominance. Bottom line, he dominated. Anyways, back to Desmond Bane. It also starts with Desmond Bane and just how he's become more of a 3-level threat offensively. Just continue to spice it up because it could pay off big time in the playoffs.
So I think that the best way to put it with Jaren Jackson Jr. is he's no longer an offensive player that surprises himself when he can have flashes of dominance. We're seeing a Jaren Jackson Jr. over the past 3 weeks that without a shadow of a doubt, he has no doubt He is the damn best player on the court, or the most dominant player on the court. It's the damn it I'm dominance, mindset. Forgive my French there, but that's the best way to describe it. And yes, I watch mixtape in my time. The Professor, probably my favorite mixtape guy of all time. So that guy's ball handling is awesome. But back to the
Yeah.
Grizzlies.
Back to the Grizzlies, back to Desmond Bane. Let me close the show with this. Shawn, I don't want to spoil anything for your piece.
Yeah.
You got to be an insider to tune into it. But Desmond Bane is on his way to 2 big milestones here in the, I would say in the coming week. Knock on wood all over the place. But he is currently at, I'm trying to, wait, I got off track. All right, here we go. I'm trying to find his totals here. Okay. Desmond Bane is at 196 games played. So he's 4 games away from 200. By the time this episode is live, it'll be 197. Probably by the time you're listening, and it'll be 198. Again, knock on wood. But he's also at 493 3-pointers. There's a bunch of different company that he'll be joining if he hits 500 threes within his first 200 games of his career, but I'll let Shawn handle all that. But I, Shawn, am asking you I'll ask you this two-part question. One, for the special piece, are you going to use that Hall of Fame comparison I'm begging you to use?
Oh yeah, and we'll go ahead. We're going to make this statement now.
Say it now. Say it now. We got engagement to make.
I'm going to shot my shit on this. 200 games into their career, Desmond Bane is clearly a more productive offensive player than Klay Thompson. Through their first 3 seasons, Desmond Bane is a better offensive player than Klay Thompson. And the key is this: you can count to 4 all that you want to. But I'm here to tell you all day long, the numbers suggest from 3, scoring overall, outside of scoring, what have you. Now, to be fair, Klay's big jump was in his 4th season, but Desmond Bane is showing a bit more confidence that he'll make that 4th-year leap as well. But one of the biggest takeaways from the piece is we're coming up on 200 career games and the end of his 3rd season. Desmond Bane is a better offensive player up to this point of his career than Klay Thompson was.
I gotta end the show on that.
No, whoa.
What?
I'm not the big hot take guy. I will.
I know you're not.
I'm not saying he's a better overall player, because Klay Thompson's defense did, I think, make him a better overall player. And this is also not meant in any way, shape, or form to diss Klay Thompson. My point is, though, the fact that Desmond Bane, we can honestly say that statement and back it up with numbers this far in his career, that is a huge compliment to the Grizzlies coaching staff, Des, and to the roster. But yes, we are continuing to see validation. We saw it at 150 career games last year, or towards the, at the end of last year. We're seeing it now. Yes, when it comes to offensive games, Desmond Bane is actually doing better than Klay Thompson was at this mutual point of their careers.
Yeah. And I will say, too, like, obviously, there's era comparison, all that kind of stuff. But also, too, I mean, and Klay Thompson still made a pretty significant jump year 1. I mean, year 1, he immediately came out as a really potent 3-point shooter. And then, I mean, he's arguably the 2nd greatest shooter of all time. I don't want Warriors fans to come at us here or anything. But like you said,
please do. If you are a Warriors fan listening to this episode, please come after us when we tell you that to start their careers, Desmond Bane is a better offensive player than Klay Thompson. Because I can tell you straightforward, if you disagree with that, you're wrong. So come after us.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. But yeah, like Klay has his advantages on the defensive end. One thing you probably didn't mention is that Desmond Bane's a better playmaker as well, but that kind of falls in line with the offense as well. But yeah, no, but we're not, like you said, you're not using it to diss Klay. It's more of a testament to Desmond Bane's growth as an offensive player, as a franchise cornerstone player, somebody who, was kept out of trade talks for a guy like Kevin Durant. He's one of the 15 greatest players of all time, probably one of the 5 greatest players this season.
And
So,
in this era of basketball, the needed piece that teams have to win titles. That's the other
bingo.
thing that stands out about it, is the development of Desmond Bane into a Klay Thompson type player on offense. That's what teams have to have in order to be able to win titles. That just consistent, reliable, not only high level shooter, but elite or scorer, but elite
Yeah.
shooter. That's the biggest takeaway. Having that type of guy, especially to complement John Morant's style of play, this is the exact type of player we needed to complement Ja to truly allow for our core to be a contender for many years to come.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're kind of looking at it, like you said, recent NBA champions, Golden State, like Clay's that elite shooter that is the Robin to the star point guard or the star player's Batman. Milwaukee, Chris Middleton, the multifaceted offensive player who's a secondary playmaker and a secondary go-to scorer. Toronto and Cleveland, kind of anomalies because they weren't kind of built in that similar structure, but like it is also because Toronto, Kawhi was like prime Jordan in that playoffs, and then LeBron's LeBron. San Antonio Spurs, another one with the San Antonio Spurs, but again, multifaceted offensive players with 3-level scoring, with secondary playmaking, with ability to run the offensive pinches. Manu Ginobili. So, yeah, like Desmond Bane has really evolved into that kind of guy, and in the process, and this is a topic that we probably touched on in past shows. Excuse me, probably touched on in past shows or past articles, but Desmond Bane has really changed the calculus of this team for the better. Finally got the elite shooter. He fits like a glove next to John Morant, and his growth has made him an indispensable kind of person. You can't get rid of a guy like Desmond Bane, no matter the guy that's on the trade market. Like, granted, Kevin Durant would have been Kevin Durant. We're not going to get into at all. Kevin Durant wanted to go to Phoenix, but it's all good, whatever. But
one thing I do want to get into that's so exciting about this, we talk about the offense of Ja and Dez. Parker, who's your vote for Defensive Player of the Year this year?
I have a very big guest to talk about this with next week. But I mean, we all know who it is. It's the Black Panther.
Yeah. So Jaren Jackson Jr., first team all defense last year, evolved into the Defensive Player of the Year this year, under contract for 3 more years. Desmond, extension eligible this summer. We're going to get him locked up for at least 5 more years. John Morant, we've got him locked in for the next 5 years. We've already seen Ja and Dez consistently be able to step up and show out against other elite offensive duos in the league and get the upper hand in those games. Now, you couple that with Jaren not only being the best defender in the league this year, but also showing he can be an elite offensive big man. That's what's so great about all of this. The multifaceted ability for each of these core 3 to do so well. So it's going to be exciting. And the thing that I'll say is this, I will admit in a heartbeat, Desmond Bane probably is my favorite player to do stat dives on. Number one, because he is just the perfect player that the Grizzlies have needed forever, that they find
forever.
But number 2, it's been so unexpected for him to compared to John and Jaren, for him to develop as he has. So, like I say, don't mean to give away the big spoiler, but hey, that's what we do when we get to do it on podcasts, especially with great company like Parker. But my point is that over the next few days, there's going to be some history made, and there's going to be a lot of accolades coming Dez's way, and every bit of it is deserved.
And Shawn is going to get into all of that on bluffcitymedia.co. Become an insider for just $5 a month. A Starbucks cup of coffee for premium Memphis sports content, including your Memphis Grizzlies, as we get ready for what's shaping out to be an exciting stretch of playoff basketball here in the coming weeks. So, Shawn, that's about all the time we have on the show. Is there anything else you want to close the show with? Anything else you want to plug in?
No, just a pleasure to talk with you. It's been a fun first month with Bluff City Media, enjoying a lot of good video content. Parker, you're absolutely doing great on your video content. I'm glad to get back in the game a little bit when it comes to the podcasting and all that. But just know that we've got a lot of great things coming. And the great thing about it is that we talk about the next evolution of what GBB was and now is. The thing is that we're talking about these different versions, the multifaceted, games of Job, Bane, and Jaren. That's kind of like it is with GBB now. We have different ways of being able to show you exactly what needs to be shown when it comes to all different coverages of the Memphis Grizzlies, and it's exciting every time we get to do it. So yeah, just for, the way that I look at it is this: give up 1 cup of coffee each month to be able to have great content to enjoy while you're having those cups of coffee for the rest of the month. That's the best way to look at it. And there's no better content when it comes to Memphis sports than Bluff City Media.
Shawn actually told me before the show that if you become a Bluff City Media insider and you really miss out on that one Starbucks cup of coffee that month, Shawn is inviting you over to his house for him to personally make you a cup of coffee.
Yeah, I'm not sure of when that was said, but come on, come on. I'm out here in the middle of nowhere, so you'll never be able to find me. But hey, if you do come, we'll have plenty of things to talk about when it comes to the Grizzlies. Parker, always a pleasure. Look forward to doing this with you as much as possible. Thank you so much every time that I get to do it.
Absolutely. It's a blast. One of the best to talk Grizzlies basketball with. You can follow him on Twitter at StatsSAC. You can follow me on Twitter at Paka_Flocka. And Grizzly Bear Blues now has a new Twitter handle, and then we lost a blue check mark as a result of that. But I mean, hey, we're all about to lose a blue check mark because of Elon Musk. So follow us on Twitter at BCM Grizzlies. Bluff City Media Grizzlies, obviously. Make sure you become a Bluff City Media insider at bluffcitymedia.co/join. You can also read our game coverage for free as well. And make sure you are also subscribing to the Grizzly Bear Blues Podcast Network, where you can find every single episode of GBB Live, Next Gen Podcast, Starting Five Podcast, Core 4 Podcast, and Grizzly Bear Bets. And also shout out to Grizzlied for joining us. They're going to have a post-game show after every single game with Bluff City Media. We're getting their podcasts as well. I can't think of all the podcasts off the top of my head. I think there's 3 of them. Really good stuff. Got a bunch of talented, eager writers ready to give you all the best Grizzlies content possible. So stick with us. It's going to be fun. It's going to be lit. Until next time, see you soon.